JunoCTRL is a hardware controller for the Alpha Juno 1, 2, MKS50, HS10, and HS80. It is also a generic MIDI controller that sends out CC messages, allowing you to control software VST instruments. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate all of the advanced functions that I programmed into the JunoCTRL, which makes it much more than just a simple PG300 clone. So let's get to it. First off, using the JunoCTRL, you can control the parameters on the Alpha Juno from your DAW or a hardware sequencer. Standard MIDI CC messages sent to the JunoCTRL will be converted into system-exclusive messages which the Alpha Juno understands. Have the mode switch set to control mode on the back of the JunoCTRL, and refer to the manual on midiclub.net to see which MIDI CC messages control which parameters on the synthesizer. Here's an example. Right now, I have Ableton sending this melody to my MKS50. You'll notice when I open the automation lanes, I have the value MIDI CC27 rising and falling. MIDI CC27 controls the low-pass filter parameter on the JunoCTRL, and you can hear the filter open and close as the melody plays. Now, let's make these notes sustain a bit longer after they're triggered. Select MIDI CC43, which controls the T4 on the Alpha Juno's envelope section, and let's increase its value. You can hear the notes ringing longer now. Let's shorten T4 for the notes near the end of the clip, but keep the notes for the first half ringing longer. Dual mode. So, it's nice to be able to draw an automation with your mouse in Ableton and have it control your Alpha Juno, but it's much more useful to actually record automation of parameters by physically moving the knobs on the JunoCTRL itself. And this is just what dual mode allows you to do in combination with a DAW or hardware sequencer, and it's probably my favorite feature of the JunoCTRL. Here's an example. Let's bring back the melody we were using before. Now this time, instead of drawing out the automation with the mouse, let's move the low-pass filter on the JunoCTRL manually. Now set the MIDI track on Ableton to record, and now Ableton is recording the movement of the knob. Let's stop and play it back. So there you have it. Instead of drawing the automation out, we can record our performance on the JunoCTRL in Ableton. Let's try another melody. Let's record ourselves tweaking the filter, resonance, and filter envelope, and then play it back. There we go. All of our knob movements have been recorded as automation in Ableton. Now, just to note, in dual mode, as long as the track is armed in your DAW, we can still control the Alpha Juno real time. Now, let's say I didn't like how much resonance I added at one point in the performance. Instead of re-recording the whole clip, which you would normally have to do with hardware synths from this era, we can just go in and edit the values we want to modify. There we go. That's a bit better. How dual mode works is the JunoCTRL sends out MIDI CC messages every time you move a parameter. These MIDI CC messages are recorded in your DAW, but also are simultaneously sent out your MIDI interface to the MIDI in of the JunoCTRL. The JunoCTRL converts these MIDI CC messages to system-exclusive messages and sends them to the Alpha Juno. And if you keep your track armed and MIDI monitoring is turned on, you are still able to control the Alpha Juno real time, whether you record automation or not. Now, for a more detailed explanation on how dual mode works or how to set it up, you can refer to our manual on our website and watch our dual mode setup video. The JunoCTRL has onboard chord memory, which functions separately from chord memory included on the Alpha Juno and MKS50. You can store up to 8 chords on the JunoCTRL. To turn chord memory on, press the chord button. By default, all 8 chords are set to a minor triad chord. To change a chord, press the chord button, and while keeping it held, press the assign button. The 2 LEDs will start flashing, and now simply play the desired chord on your keyboard. Be sure to have your keyboard connected to the MIDI in of the JunoCTRL first. Now, press either the chord or assign button to exit. By default, chord number 1 is selected. To switch to the second chord that's stored on the unit, hold the chord button and wiggle knob 2 slightly in the envelope section of the JunoCTRL. Moving the knob in this situation will not send out a parameter change. It just selects which chord out of this stored 8 the JunoCTRL will be using. Now, we hear a minor chord. Let's change it to a major chord with the tonic an octave lower. Now let's switch back to our first chord in the memory bank, the minor ninth. And back to the major chord. Now, whichever was the last chord you selected will remain selected, even if you power off the unit. I programmed this onboard chord memory for a couple of reasons. One, because the chord memory on the MKS50 is annoying and slow to program, and 2, because since the Alpha Juno is essentially a single oscillator synth, I found chord memory a useful function for creating interesting timbre. You can make some interesting sounds spreading out chords over, let's say, 4 octaves. And it's nice when you find interesting sounding chord shapes to be able to save them and quickly recall them later. The third reason I added onboard chord memory was so I can have 2 different chord memory modes, which is what I'm going to talk about next. Poly and mono chord mode. So there are 2 chord modes on the JunoCTRL, poly chord mode and mono chord mode. By default, the JunoCTRL is set to poly chord mode, but we're going to talk about mono chord mode first. So let's switch the controller into mono chord mode. Press and hold the chord button, and while keeping that button held down, press snapshot. All lights will flash, signaling that you've entered the new mode, and you can let go of both buttons. Now we're in mono chord mode. So mono chord mode just means that only the last chord you played will be heard. So you see here when I'm playing chords on the keyboard, even stacking them on top of each other, only the last chord is rung. Since the Alpha Juno is only a 6-voice synth, this mode makes it easy and painless to jam out those classic minor or major ninth chords, or any chords that are like 6 notes long, for example. And you hear that a lot in house and techno riffs. So you can bash out these chord riffs and you don't have to worry about letting go of the previous note completely and running out of synth voices. Now let's switch to poly chord mode by holding down the chord memory button and then pressing snapshot. So poly chord mode just means that you're allowed to play more than 1 chord at a time. You can stack as many chords as you like, as long as the total amount of notes played is less than 6, which is the maximum polyphony the Alpha Juno allows for. So this is good when you just want to add an octave in the bass or add a fifth, like so. You see the JunoCTRL now allows you to stack chords. So Snapshot Trigger gives you the option to adjust multiple values and then have them all update on the Alpha Juno at the same time. Here's an example. Hold the Assign button while adjusting the parameters on the Juno control. You'll notice even though I've changed the position of the low pass filter quite drastically, no changes to the sound are heard yet. So let's release the Assign button. There we go. The filter, chorus, range, resonance, all updated at the same time the moment I let go of the Assign button. Let's try it again. And again. Now just to note, Snapshot Trigger only works in control mode and CC mode. Also note, if you press the Assign button and you don't move any knobs, the Assign button will turn on and you will have just entered Assign mode. Just press the Assign button again to exit back into regular operation. So that's all for today. I've gone over the most important features of the Juno control, however there is more, and you can read the manual on our website to dive a little further into the controller's functionality. If you found this video useful, please click the like button and feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And finally, just for fun, here's how to make the Hoover sound from Human Resources track Dominator.